I don't know how many people tell us all the time, I've got a muscadine vine on my place and it just looks beautiful. I want to move it or grow it or do something with it. What do I want to do? Well, you definitely kind of have to think through that a little bit, because number one, does it actually produce fruit? If it doesn't produce fruit, you have not seen it produce fruit, and it's a wild vine, you are about 99.8% guaranteed that it's a male vine and it won't ever produce fruit. Can that be okay? Sure, if you're just wanting something for an ornamental, that's certainly fine, and we've got a couple of those here on our place that were wild vines that were like, you know what, it's here, let's cultivate it, let's see what it does. Number two, have you tasted the fruit? If you don't like it and it's not good, it's probably not worth your effort to actually try and cultivate and improve this wild vine. Call Isons or Bottoms, get you a known variety that you know you like, that produces excellent quality fruit, that you know is self-fertile, and or it's a female and you have a self-fertile vine to pair with it, and grow that. You will be much better off in the long term, and it will be a much more productive vine with much better flavor most of the time. Dean Family Acres. Hey guys, back at it again. We've been waiting on this rain to stop so that we can get some pruning done, and usually our date to try and do a lot of this is in February. Strategically, we try and work around Valentine's Day, so we're not too far off, but we've been waiting on the rain to stop. You just don't want to prune when there's going to be a bunch of rain, say the next day or that evening or something like that. You want to give time for those cuts that you make to heal up. Since we don't have rain at least for another day and a half to 2 days, then I think we're actually going to try and get started on some of this. Obviously, with the amount of fruits that we have here on our place, we definitely are going to have to stagger this some. I was having a conversation actually on Sunday with a lady from our church. They have about 40 muscadine vines. We've actually visited there several times, and they're just making the comment about how long it takes and that kind of thing. So again, pace yourself, don't overdo it, but you definitely want to keep an eye out for making sure that the weather conditions are right, and especially with that rain. So without further ado, let's get going. So we're actually going to get started right here on our upper muscadines and where those are, and kind of thinking through how and where we need to prune. This isn't going to be a step-by-step, although we're going to point out a couple of different things. Overall, it's really just how are things looking right now and what you need to be looking out for with small tips for pruning. Let's get started here on the muscadines. We had some questions about how our Supreme vine is doing. Remember, this is the second Supreme vine that we planted. The one that we planted over on the dog fence a number of years ago didn't make it past the first year. However, this one we actually picked up as a potted plant from Ison's Vineyard, and we actually planted this and a Black Beauty, and we got one other variety that I can't remember off the top of my head right now when we got that. But anyway, someone was asking exactly how well that Supreme has done, and it has done exceptionally well. Honestly, it's probably grown the best out of anything that we've planted up here on the upper vineyard, and just in regards to the growth rate, that kind of thing, having pretty good formation. It did not make it all the way to the end of the vine, or to the end of the trellis. However, that's not something that I push for anymore. I used to do that, really pounding the fertilizer to them, but I just learned that if you aren't careful, then sometimes you can push them too far and then they get some winter damage. Do not want to deal with that again, as we'll see on the Ruby Crisp, and how the recovery takes and setting you back another year. So let's look at exactly what we're going to have to do to prune here on the Supreme. All right guys, so hopefully you can see this just a little bit here in regards to what we have, and I will encourage you just a couple of different things quickly in regards to muscadines. Just look at your growth habit. We'll look at that on a couple of these. Again, this isn't going to be an in-depth this is how you prune video, but we're going to give you a couple of different tips if you're looking for just a quick tutorial on what to look out for, I guess. But you want to kind of look at your growth habit, and then with each one of these arms that you've got coming out, you want to have at least a hand space between each one. I'm a little more particular in regards to if they're growing down, like this one here is, it's growing straight down. I don't want it. It's also kind of cramping my spacing, so I actually will take that one completely off. Same with this one here. Same with this one here. All right. Again, just thinking about your spacing here. Then you want to come in here and you want to see actually how many buds you have. You can see these really close here. I'll give you a zoom in, but there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, or 11 on this one. And depending on how you want to kind of structure your vine, typically if it's not a very vigorous grower, then you might want to leave 4 buds on here. If it's a pretty vigorous grower, you definitely want to be down at 2. In general, you want to be at 2 to 3 buds. You also do want to check and see that those tendrils, when they're coming across, that they are not wrapping around your vine. Now we'll compare that Supreme to this Black Beauty. The Supreme has grown much better than this Black Beauty, but the Black Beauty has done well. I'm not going to complain about it. Overall, I think that the soil up on this upper end just is not nearly as good, just up on top of this hill. There's an old road bed here years ago, right in this area, and this just doesn't have very good topsoil. So here is that Black Beauty. So really, nothing to prune here. This is dead, so that won't matter. I'll actually just break that off there. And all of the rest of this is fine. Let's hope. Oh yeah, we still got some green there. This is where things get a wee bit interesting. These are our Ruby Crisp vines. We've got a row of 3 of these planted here. And between them getting winter damage and deer damage and who knows what else, it's just been an interesting process. I've said at least for 2 years now, this is the year we're gonna have a great crop, and something happens. Every one of these 3 Ruby Crisp has sustained winter frost or freeze damage at some point in different stages of their lives. These bottom 2 actually, the first year took damage, and then the next year the upper one took damage, and it took until right before the end of the season for me to see a little bit of growth on that first one up at the top of the hill, because I was ready to dig it up. But I kept saying, you know what, I've got a whole row of Ruby Crisp, we're just going to keep it and we'll work it along and see if it comes back. This year, if it does not take off early in the spring, we're going to have to figure out exactly what we're going to do. I do want to keep it as a Ruby Crisp just because I'll have actually one whole row of these, and I haven't necessarily been able to do that in a couple of other areas, as we're wanting to try and maximize the amount of different varieties that we have of Muscadines. Anyway, these are much more interesting to prune, as you can see, especially on this end. They have grown like crazy. Ruby Crisp are also known for overcropping if you aren't careful. So you got to kind of think about that aspect. So even though we have about 2 feet of growth on this side here has well over 10 feet, and we've pruned it back several times. Part of this was on my fault because I actually pulled this over and it broke off. So I had to allow another one to offshoot. A lot of times you do hear people talking about when my vine comes to the top of to the wire, what do I need to do? Do I need to just lean it over or not? This is a perfect example of what could happen if you just lean it over and expect for another bud to take off. It could be super strong on one side and pretty weak on another. I won't say that this will last forever, but you really want to prune that off once it gets to the top of the vine so that it will fork and send equal energy to both sides. So let's dive in, and I'll point out a couple things over here in regards to pruning, and we'll go on to the next one. So as you can see here, we've just got crazy amounts of growth, and it's just absolutely nuts how much growth we have. We've got growth coming all the way from over here, going further than we had it on the fork going this way. The one healthy branch on the fork going this way is coming back this way. Again, this is why you want to prune, and you can see that we have actually pruned this in years past. So let me kind of show you a little bit about when you're looking at more mature vines. Not that this one's super mature, but I think it's helpful in regards to knowing exactly what and where to prune. All right guys, so you see this is where the main trunk is coming up. This here is actually the cordon that grew off later from where the split. You can actually see, I think that split was right here in regards to when it went the other direction. But getting a healthy trunk, which is fine. You want to keep that cleaned off all the time, not a problem. And then this was what we had last year and where we pruned. So I believe we probably pruned about right in here, and they just continue to take off. So what we're gonna do here is, you're kind of thinking, all right, now what do I do with this fork here? And you want to come out, you got 1 bud, 2 buds, 3, you want to do 3, that's fine. Ruby Crisp is a vigorous grower. It is known to overcrop, so we're gonna prune that at 2. You got, let's see, 1, 2, so we'll prune that there. And again, you've got things going over like this here, like, all right, wow, where does this go to? And you have a tendril that's wrapped around. So right here, you've got a tendril from that vine we just cut is wrapped around. So you want to cut that off, number 1. It's actually wrapped around multiple times, 3 different times. You want to pull that out. Now, you do not want to leave this here. If you leave this here, then you're gonna choke off this vine. So you need, or this cordon, arm, whatever you want to call it. So you need to get that off. And especially if it's on there a couple different times, you're gonna have some problems. I think as we dive into this, we're actually gonna end up cutting off most of what I'm fighting with right here, just because I was trying to allow some extra growth before. All right, so I will set it up and we will let you guys just watch me work on pruning down the line. Again, that one is coming, y'all, all the way from the other side over here. Nuts. Sometimes people think, oh wow, you have killed that vine. Absolutely not. You have done exactly what you're supposed to, and that's prune it appropriately. And this one will be your line coming all the way back. If they do start weeping on you, that's totally normal. Don't worry about it. You do want to kind of pay attention when you start pulling these off. You don't want to rip one if you can help it. Alright, as you can see here, we've got a lot of growth going down, which I do not like. You also want to make sure that you've still got your hand width apart. So we can kind of, if you pay attention to where these buds are coming out, you can kind of make them, not make them, but they will tend to want to sprout out that direction. It's kind of like when you're pruning any other tree. You might be thinking, wow, you got a lot of growth, you should just kind of let all this bunch up down here. In reality, you don't want to do that. You want to find your one single cordon coming down, and then you want to prune the rest of this off. Again, it just takes time and visually kind of taking your time and looking at it. Off there. See, all that growth came from just 3 that kind of just went crazy. Now we'll come back, make sure that you've got your tendrils loose. So that's there. We do have a little bit of growth coming off the end, which we will come back here. Got this coming all the way off the end. Is it hurting anything? Not necessarily, but we need some growth to go back that way. So what we're gonna do is just come back here, prune it, It's just a dead stick in between the Martin gourd houses. On to the next one. All right guys, growth on this one's much more uniform. It looks really, really nice, but remember this came up and the root system is strong, but it completely had to start over because of that winter dieback. This one looks pretty strong. The next one, not so much. We're just gonna let it kind of start off. But again, this is kind of a little bit more uniform. Things are spaced out, not going all one way, because the cordon going the other way on this one, I cut and let it fork and it did its thing. So you can tell the difference. Again, remember, you want hand width spacing. You want to kind of think through, hey, where's my hand width? And again, these Ruby Crisp are known to overcrop. I don't like them growing to the bottom. I'll cut that off. Cut that off. Right out of hand width-ish. Again, you don't have to be super particular, but Ruby Crisp are known to overcrop. So you want to think through that. And this is the end of our run. Can they overlap? Most certainly they can, but there's no need to. This is plenty of growth. They've got pretty much a maximum of about 20 feet that they're gonna go. And if you try and do over that, you're really not helping anything. Looking good. Now let's check out this last one. Hopefully you can see the growth all the way from here to here, but this was growth from 2 years ago, and as you can see, completely, utterly dead. Now, does that mean that you necessarily need to go ahead and pull that up? Absolutely not. I left this for approximately a year, and it did start coming up from the roots. Again, just think about your timing. Is it a rare variety? Is it something that you can replace easily? And your time frame in regards to growing and waiting for fruit. That's all and what you need to be thinking about when you have one do something like this. You see right here, this and this are two shoots that came up this past year, and they came up, I would say, in probably September. And this is dead completely. As you can see, absolutely no good. But these two are new growth, and they're from the same roots. So we'll see how these do this year. We might let them fork off and grow on their own just because of the dieback we've had on these Ruby Crisp, but we will decide what will work best. This is late fry. It has been in the ground since 2022. And it's grown up and down about 1.5 feet either direction. Last year I said this was the year we decide what we're gonna do with the late fry. And you see it's still here. I'm gonna give it one more year. I heard some really good things about late fry, and I heard some not so good things about late fry, and I think it just depends on the plant, the situation, etc., just like anything. But it's nice to have an opportunity to be able to have a later fruiting variety. I tended to like the bronze varieties, so this lends itself to maybe something that I might want to be able to eat if we don't have earlier frost in the fall or something like that. Then I might be able to pick some of these at Halloween. You never know. This past year I actually was picking a second crop of Paulk and a few second crop of Ruby Crisp at Thanksgiving. That's super rare though. But late fry, there's nothing that we need to prune. In regards to form, it's looking great. In regards to growth vigor, it's looking absolutely horrible. Last but certainly not least is this row here that we planted. We still don't have the post in the ground yet, but we've got a Fry Seedless, a Sweet Mix, and a Pam. And for now, I'm actually going to leave these. I know I probably should prune them a little bit sooner, but I really want to get that trellis up before I get things pruned and shaped up, especially on that Pam that's kind of growing like crazy. Who knows? I'm going to wait on that. Again, that's a personal preference. Is that what I should do? Probably not, but that's what I'm going to do on that. Let's go check out the other Muscadines that we've got and see if they need any pruning. Not sure if you can tell anything different from here, but there is a little bit more sun than there used to be, but there's still not enough. So when we planted this vine here, it's a Paulk, and you can see as I walk down through here, it is absolutely super leggy, and that's because it just doesn't get enough sun. And you might have a plant that grows very, very well, but it's a good chance that it might not fruit and or ripen if you don't have enough sun on that plant. So again, it's very strategic when you start thinking about where you plant, how you plant, and the surroundings, both right now and in the future. Because if you think about it, those muscadines potentially are going to be there for 15, 20, maybe 30 years. And if you've got some trees that are going to be growing up, you might get fruit for the first 10 years, but then, man, those pines take off and then you have no sun. So certainly think about that when you are planning out where you're going to put your orchard or stick additional vines. I really wish we had thought a little bit further forward in regards to a couple of different things and layout. I always tell people, make sure that you have at least been at your place for a year before you decide, this is what I'm going to do. Because you never know, things might change. You want to see where water runs, where things stay dry, where the soil's healthy, what grows well, etc. I really wish that we had done almost all of our muscadine varieties up on I call it the upper vineyard. Yes, we have 9 up there now, with room for at least 3 more, if not 4. But if we had been able to kind of put everything up there and then maybe put blueberries and some of these other things in a different location, then it might have worked a little bit better. Overall though, it's going to work fine. It's just a matter of personally being a little particular about, hang on a second, why do I have stuff here, there, wherever? I will say this though, at some point, some more of these pine trees are going to go down. We just took down this pine tree here, and it went down in an uneventful form because I had it strapped and my son helped me and we got it taken down. And thankfully, it did not clip the old under $1,000 barn build here. Speaking of which, if you guys would like to see us continue to work on this, comment down below, because I've been getting the itch to kind of work on a few more projects and put them on the list and kind of knock some out. And it would definitely be beneficial for us and our tractor and a couple of other things if we at least got a portion of that lean-to completed from when we put the poles in well over a year ago now. So if you'd like to see more of that, comment down below. Anyway, back to the Paulk muscadine here. Eventually we're going to take down some more of these pine trees. I think we might leave just a couple, and for no particular reason, but honestly, when they get big, they make me a little bit nervous taking them down with other things around. Not that I can't do it, but start thinking about, hey, I planted pawpaws here, I planted honeyberries here, I planted a crepe myrtle here, I planted cherry, that weeping cherry back here as well. So there's a couple of different things that I'm trying to miss, including and most importantly the barn, and that's why that one went down. But there are at least a couple others that we will strategically take down probably in the next year or so to even give more sun. In all honesty, if we would take down a couple on this side as well, then that would be beneficial. But slowly but surely, you can't do it all at once, especially when you're doing it by yourself. Alright guys, so now we will get to working on pruning up this Paulk. I do know it's a little bit harder to see, but just like anything else, you just want to prune it the best you can. In this situation, you can see why you want to prune it well, because you end up with energy all over the place instead of where you want it. I don't know how many people tell us all the time, I've got a muscadine vine on my place and it just looks beautiful. I want to move it or grow it or do something with it. What do I want to do? Well, you definitely kind of have to think through that a little bit, because number one, does it actually produce fruit? If it doesn't produce fruit, you have not seen it produce fruit, and it's a wild vine, you are about 99.8% guaranteed that it's a male vine and it won't ever produce fruit. Can that be okay? Sure, if you're just wanting something for an ornamental, that's certainly fine, and we've got a couple of those here on our place that were wild vines that were like, you know what, it's here, let's cultivate it, let's see what it does. Number two, have you tasted the fruit? If you don't like it and it's not good, it's probably not worth your effort to actually try and cultivate and improve this wild vine. Call Isons or Bottoms, get you a known variety that you know you like, that produces excellent quality fruit, that you know is self-fertile, and or it's a female and you have a self-fertile vine to pair with it, and grow that. You will be much better off in the long term, and it will be a much more productive vine with much better flavor most of the time. Number three, why do you want to keep that vine? Is it a family thing? Is it family land? You and your grandpa or grandma used to pick those muscadine grapes from that vine? Okay, I'll legitimately let you say that's fine, keep that one. Otherwise, I just strongly recommend just replace it. It's really, really not that big of a deal. And that brings me to the fourth point, and how many years are you going to give it? Case in point, right here. This vine here, right next to our $1,000 barn build, when we cut down these trees, I noticed it was a little vine. I was like, hey, I think that's a little muscadine vine. The only other vine that we had planted was over by the garden, where I planted the two that we got from the Jockey Lot flea market insert here. That ended up not really being what they said it was, but the fruit's pretty good. So again, think about that before you go purchasing. Anyway, back to this vine. The vine here has ended up being a male. It will not produce. I've checked the flowers every single year, and it just will not produce. Now, what am I going to do? Kind of thinking through what we're going to do with this barn build and how it's going to grow and improve. When we initially built this, it was specifically for the goats because we had goats. Now what's it for? And trying to think through that. So there's a chance that the barn might actually extend this way a little bit, and getting rid of that tree there was one aspect, as you can see the stump right there. So this is the end for this muscadine, because it doesn't produce, and we've got, I think, 15 plus varieties at this point of known cultivars that do produce. We've got some wild vines that produce a little bit growing in the trees up by the driveway, and there's just no need. Is it a nice looking vine? Sure. Is it kind of in the way? Yeah, kind of. And also you need to kind of think through your proximity that you're planting vines to structures, that kind of thing. I've seen a couple that planted. Sure, run those muscadine vines along your gutter. Perfectly fine, but what happens when you get a little older and you can't prune those? I would retract the statement of it being perfectly fine. That's not a good idea. If you've got a small area that you're planting on, you just need to make sure that you just plant a nice self-fertile variety in a small area, and that's what you got. Find a good friend who also has muscadines and volunteer to go over there and help. We've got several people in our local area. That's exactly what they've done, and it's worked really, really well for them, especially once it got into retirement time, when maybe one or the other couldn't necessarily keep up with the upkeep, and they had to kind of figure out what they were going to do. So for now, I'm going to prune this down to pretty much nothing. And I probably need to get the tractor back in here to actually try and get this up as much as possible, because it will probably keep trying to shoot up some growth. Because remember, there was a tree right here that this was growing up, and this was an offshoot of a vine that was already in the ground. So I'm pretty certain the root system is pretty substantial. Let's get this done. this is a perfect example of why you should not be intertwining your vine in and amongst your fencing. We did that video on chain link fence as a trellis, and as you can see, it starts to intertwine. On which you can be like, oh, that's nice and secure, but look at this. Does that look nice and secure? Does this look nice and secure? No, and that will eventually kill your vine. So certainly think about that whenever you're thinking about how you want to do it. Even if you're using a regular trellis, you do not want to end up wrapping around, because even on that regular trellis wire, it will eventually start to grow its way into that vine and it will not remain healthy. So don't intertwine it around that wire. Alright guys, so hopefully that was informative in regards to being able to prune your muscadine vines all the way from basically first year and prune them at the top of that wire, let them go, to that second year. Do you need to prune them very much or not? Keeping that hand spacing, and the critical step of, remember, you're kind of building from the beginning out. So that's why you want to start year one pruning, year two pruning really well. You can kind of get a little bit more lax the further you get out, but it's still going to be core to making sure that you're getting a good established structure to your muscadine vine, as we've got here in the ones that have been in the ground, I believe, for 4 years now. So hopefully that's been beneficial for you. Again, I'd love to hear some comments down below in regards to just other tips that you might have. If you do see them starting to weep, that's not a problem. But I would also encourage you, don't necessarily prune these if you know you're going to have some super cold temps in the really near future. But I've also pruned, my brother-in-law has one that he doesn't necessarily tend to, or doesn't know exactly what to do, and I pruned it for him the last 2 years at Christmas, and it's done absolutely fine. They live a little over an hour north of us. So yeah, just working through those aspects and kind of just knowing the small amount of risk that you have, but also making it work with the time that you have available. Hopefully this has been beneficial, as I said earlier, and I do appreciate each and every one of y'all watching thus far. If you watched it this far, you definitely appreciate what we're trying to do here. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to this video. When you do subscribe, don't forget to ring that bell like who? That's right, Mike Tyson did in the 1980s. Thanks guys, y'all have a wonderful and blessed one. Hey guys, thanks so much for watching today's video. Over here you're going to have a playlist about muscadines, and then over here you're going to have the latest video in regards to what we've uploaded. So hopefully you enjoyed today's video, and if you want to see more content just like this, don't forget to subscribe right here. Thanks so much guys, y'all have a wonderful and blessed day. We'll see you next Sunday.